All right. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about money. As John talked about it a couple of minutes ago, we're going to be talking about money. The reality is that every single one that's watching, myself included, everyone that's not watching, all the 7 billion people on the planet or so, every single one of us are affected by finances. How much we have, how much we don't have, how much we wish we had, how much, all of these things do affect our everyday life. And as John just said a couple of minutes ago, the reality is every one of us thinks about money a couple of times in the course of 24 hours. It's just the reality. You think about money, the decisions you make regarding purchasing certain things or not purchasing certain things, going to certain places, not going to certain places, wearing certain things and not wearing certain things. And all of these things are financial decisions that we make. And these things, and the money that we have or don't have affects the decisions that we make. So one thing we have to understand is we live in an economic world. We cannot escape that reality. We live in an economic world. And therefore, finances are a part of our everyday life. And in this last several episodes, we're talking about back to the future. We're talking about planning for the future. We're talking about the future of our lives. And we cannot complete talking about the future of our lives if we don't talk about finances. And so it's very important that every single one of us understands the reality that we live in an economic world and also understands, just like every other area of life, we just cannot dream of a beautiful financial future and not do anything about it. Everybody who's on the call right now, everybody on this planet wants a successful financial future. Everybody wants to be rich. Now, some of you might say, no, Pastor, I don't care about being rich. I don't care about, big houses or nice cars and jewelry. I don't care about all of that stuff. Sure, that might be the case. You might be among us, the few that is not necessarily interested in a nice car and a big house and all of that. But here's the reality. Even though you are not in that category, you definitely don't want to be in a place where your needs are not met. Am I right about that? Nobody wants to be in a place where their needs are not met. Nobody wants to be in a place where they're constantly fighting for their everyday necessities of life, where they're having to beg and where they're having to borrow and steal and where they're having to always ask for help for the daily necessities of life. Nobody wants to be in that situation. How many of you love to be in debt? Anybody who loves to be in debt? See, nobody, I don't see a single hand right now. Nobody likes to be in debt, which lets me know you don't want to be under the burden of debt, right? So everybody wants to have a successful financial future. Now, I understand that definition, the definition of success when it comes to finances may be different for different people. However, I think we can come to this agreement that the base success line when we're talking about financial success, right, or financial independence, is that none of us are struggling for our needs and none of us are under the burden of debt. Right? If we can agree upon that, give me some kind of reaction, a high five or something, raise your hands so that I know we're all on the same page and we can move forward. All right? None of us wants to be in that kind of place. We don't want to be in a place where we cannot take care of our needs. Neither do we want to be in a place where we are under the burden of debt. All right? Now, pretty much every single one of you that is on this Zoom call right now, because you're young adults, you are currently working, or I'm going to assume that you're currently working. There might be some of you who might be transitioning between jobs, or you are looking for a job, but you are pretty much working. And I believe that every one of you can think about the day when you got your first official job, right? I'm not talking about a part-time job. I'm not talking about just doing something for someone and getting a little money. I'm talking about you got your first official government job or job in the MNCs or job in your, whatever field of expertise that you have. You wanted to get that job and you finally got that job. Now, when you got that job, I'm sure that most of us, or a majority of people, will think or have this idea, now that I work for Google, now that I work for Facebook, now that I work for this MNC, and now that I work for the government, all my financial needs are going to be taken care of. I am going to be financially secure. I'm going to be able to take care of all the things that I wanted to. I will be able to get the bike that I want, the cell phone that I want, I'll be able to go to the restaurants that I want. I'll be able to take the trips with my friends that I want, and all of these things. You thought everything was going to be made for you, right? Now, however, the reality is this. I would assume, and I would challenge that many of you that are on this call right now, and many young adults that you know, your friends, your cousins who are in the same age group, many of you, when you think about your finances, what you feel is not contentment. What you feel is not joy. What you feel is not satisfaction, and what you feel is not hope. The reality is, the more I talk to young adults, what I understand and what I see is when they think about their finances, many of them are actually ashamed of their finances. Not because, again, please pay attention, not because they don't have a job. They do have a job, and yet they are ashamed of their finances. Another thing that I've observed is with young people, there are several young people, or I should almost say many young people, who are actually fearful about their finances. Not just ashamed or not just shameful, but they're actually fearful. And there are many of them who are uncertain and hopeless when it comes to the area of finances. Uncertain and hopeless when it comes to the area of finances. Again, I said this after I said that all of this is happening after they're working in the MNCs, after they got the government job, after they graduated from college and got the job that they always wanted, or started the business that they wanted to start. Now, why is it that even though you are making money, somehow it always feels like you don't have enough? Somehow it always feels like I can't be honest regarding my finances with my friends. I cannot tell them clearly exactly how much I make, or how much I'm in debt, and how much I need, and all of these things. I just can't be honest with my friends. I see many young adults in that situation. So if the lack of job is not the reason why we are in the place we are, it's because of this. And if you're taking notes, write this down. It has to do with or let me say this. This is not because you are earning too little. You're not in that place because you're earning too little, nor does it have to do with the fact that everyone else is earning more than you are earning. It has nothing to do with that. What it has to do with is not living a life that is based on financial laws or principles. Right? This is because many of us are not living our lives that are based on financial laws and principles. Just like there are laws in the physical world, just like there are laws in the spiritual world, there are laws in the financial world. There are principles in the financial world. And the reality is we haven't been educated in this area. And all we have been educated is in how to work our laptops, and how to work on the machines, and how to work in the hospital, and how to work in the lab. And so what we do is we work all of that and we get the money. But when we get the money, we don't know how to work the money. We don't know what to do with the money. We don't know the principles that affect the money, or affect the finances that we have in our lives. All right? I hope I'm making sense with that. All right? It is because decisions that went against biblical wisdom were made, and we find ourselves in the places and the positions where we are today. The reason why we find ourselves where we are, the reason why we are in the places we are, is because biblical wisdom was violated in our lives. After we got the job, biblical wisdom was violated. And because that wisdom was violated, now when it comes to our finances, we're in a place where we're ashamed, we feel hopeless, we're fearful about our financial futures. Now, The Bible has a whole lot to say about money. But again, today we have limited time, but here's one of the things that I want to do. Foundationally, go with me to Matthew chapter 6 and verse 21. Matthew chapter 6 and verse 21. It says, "For where your treasure is, your heart, there your heart will be also. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Now, this is a very counterculture idea, right? See, we think money has everything to do with numbers. But what the word is telling us is that money has little to do with numbers, and that money has a lot to do with our heart. Okay? Money has very little to do with numbers, but money has a whole lot to do with our heart. There is such a thing as the money-heart connection. Right? The money-heart connection. And if we're not mindful, because we're not taught on it, and our schools don't teach us about it, our parents might not have taught about it, our colleges and our companies don't teach us about it, many people don't understand this, and they think that money is only about the numbers. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about 3 decisions that I want every one of us to be making. 3 decisions that is going to determine your financial future. 3 decisions that will determine your financial future. Now, again, these 3, I'm not saying these are the only 3 decisions that you need to make, but I'm trying to bring down things to a foundational level so that everyone can understand this and so that everyone can actively take these decisions today itself. Number 1, decide to be diligent. Decide to be diligent. We're talking about 3 decisions. Decide to be diligent. And again, by the way, as always, if you've got a friend, a young adult that will benefit out of this, if they're in money problems, money troubles, quickly send them the link and have them join us, because we're just getting into the main 3 decisions at this point. 3 decisions. Go with me to Proverbs chapter 27, please. Proverbs 27. I'll read from the New King James. Proverbs 27. I'll start reading from verse 23. All right. It says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds. For riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the hay is removed and the tender grass shows itself, and the herbs of the mountains are gathered in, the lamb will provide for your clothing, and the goats the price of a field. You shall have enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household, and the nourishment of your maid servants." Now, verse 23 to 27. Now, you might be looking at me and thinking, okay, Pastor, I don't like animals. I don't really live in the mountains. I'm not a farmer. What does this have to do with me? Now, this has everything to do with us, because the writer of the book of Proverbs was talking to an agricultural or an agrarian society. And so he's giving us the example of flocks and the fields. But today, with the point he's trying to make is that we ought to be diligent when it comes to the area of finances. We just can't assume things when it comes to finances. A diligent man looks through things. A diligent man knows his numbers. A diligent man knows where things are. All right? Things are not misplaced. And so here he's letting us know that when it comes to the area of finances, we ought to be diligent. We cannot be careless and expect to prosper financially. So here are a couple of things that I want you to note down. What are the sources of your income? What are the sources of your income? He's saying, be diligent to know the state of your flocks. Why is he talking about the state of his flocks? Because it is through his flocks the man was going to live. It was through the flocks that he was going to make the money for him, his households, and his maid servants. That means all the people that he was employing. So even for your life, what are the sources of your income? For some of you, it might just be one. And you might say, my job is my source of income. Some of you might have 2 or 3 jobs. Some of you might say, okay, I do work, but then I also teach during nights. Or I teach once a week. I teach 2-3 times a week. Or I sell on eBay. Or I do online business. Or I do trading. Whatever it is. But you need to know, what are the sources of your income? You've got to be diligent in knowing that. Number 2, in the same category of being diligent. What is your budget? And do you have one in the first place? How many of you have a budget? Just respond with a hand, please. How many of you have a budget? I saw only one hand go up. Only see John's. Okay, 2, 3. I saw 2, 3 other hands go up. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, anyone else? Wow, okay. So I would say out of 60 some people that are on the call, I don't think I've seen more than 10 hands go up. Right? Out of 60 people, I've seen just about 10 hands go up, which means there are only about 10 people who even have an idea of where their money is going every month. Who even have an idea, which means the rest of the people, we don't even have an idea of where the money goes. And if you don't have a budget, if you don't have a set limit, then you're not going to be a diligent person to begin with. Are you understanding this? So if you want to have a secure financial future, a successful financial future, you've got to understand that you've got to have a budget. See, again, in the world that we live in today, we're moving further and further into a cashless society. Right, growing up, all of us used to carry money, and then a couple of years ago, it became credit cards, and at least you were carrying some kind of physical card. And now you don't even carry a card; you just carry your watch or your cell phone. Now, here's the danger of living cashless when you don't have a budget. Here's why. See, when you were spending money as cash, when it was a physical asset like in your hands, when you were paying the shopkeeper, there was an emotional connection that was taking place. You felt money leaving your hands. And there was an emotional attachment to it, and there was an emotional connection to it. And so people actually felt like, okay, I am losing money when I go to this store, or now that I bought this, like I no longer have something that I used to have in my possession. All right? Now, what's happening is that emotional connection, scientists and researchers tell us that emotional connection dropped significantly when it came to the credit card. Because people were not really looking at their money. And so people would just swipe for everything because they thought the imaginary bank was always going to provide for them. Now, I haven't seen enough research on this yet, but I am pretty sure that once the research comes about Google Pay and all other kinds of Paytm and whatever, WhatsApp Pay or Apple Pay and all of these things, once the research on that stuff comes out, I guarantee you the emotional connection has even dropped down much further. And so when we are spending money, we don't even feel like we are actually losing something that we currently possess. And so for a lot of people, we're just ordering stuff away. See, before, when you wanted to buy a pair of shoes, you actually had to get out of your house. When you wanted to buy something, anything, when you wanted to buy a couch, when you wanted to buy a sofa, when you wanted to buy groceries, you actually had to go out of your house and you've got to do certain things and then get them. And so there was all of these hurdles that you needed to pass in order to spend your money. But today, there's no hurdle. You don't even have to get out of your bed to get all the food that you need for the day. You don't even have to get out of the bed to order water for your house. But there's I know of a guy who literally orders everything on his phone. Even chewing gum is ordered from his phone. He doesn't even go to the shop to get chewing gum. Like, again, more power to him. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with it. The only thing that I'm saying is, but if you are not mindful, what's going to happen is you're not going to be diligent as to where the money is going. And even though you're making a bunch of money, by the end of the month, you don't know where you've spent it. All you know is, the credit card bill came and this is how much I have to pay. But why did you spend so much? You've got no idea. Because there was no diligence in looking after the money that came to you. All right. So it's very important to know. Again, it's gotten, sometimes I even have conversations like with people. I'm sure that every one of you are familiar with credit card points, right? You spend so much, you get credit card points. Or even with stores right now, you go to the store, you spend so much, and in your next visit, you can use these coupons, and your next visit, and you can use this much % off, and all of that. And so now it's psychologists tell us that people started associating credit card points as more valuable than actual money. Are you getting that? So what people will do is they will justify and say, oh, I know I'm spending 10,000 rupees, but I'm getting 10,000 points. Like 10,000 points is somehow more valuable than 10,000 rupees. It's not. But credit card companies have done such a good job of convincing us that points are the thing. You want to be the king of the points rather than the king of the money. And so people keep swiping away, thinking they actually feel good for spending money now. See, it wasn't that way before. Now we actually feel good when we spend our money away. And that's why it's so very important to be diligent. Have a budget in place. The last time when we had Money Matters, I talked about this. I talked about having a budget. What does a budget do? A budget places restraints in your life. It draws the line in your life. It says, okay, you might be making 2 lakhs a month. You might be making 5 lakhs a month. But the budget will let you know exactly how much you can spend on restaurants. The budget will tell you exactly how much you can spend on travel. The budget will tell you exactly how much you can spend on clothes. But if you don't have that, the sale will decide how much you spend. The store will decide. The advertising will decide. Your friend who just wants to take you to the mall just so that you can accompany them will decide how much you spend, right? But if you have a budget, the budget will decide and tell you how much you need to spend on entertainment, how much you need to spend on food, how much on clothing, how much on gifts, everything. The budget will decide for you, and the decision-making process becomes so much easier. And so when the budget says you can only spend, let's say just hypothetically, that you can only spend 10,000 rupees a month to go out and eat at restaurants. And let's say you already finished, you're at 9,900. And if your friends tell you, hey, let's go out and eat. Now, if they're just talking about going down the street and to get a coffee, or not even a Starbucks coffee, I guess, but if you're just getting coffee on the side of the street, or if you're getting some pani puri, then you can look at your budget and say, sure, I'll come with you. But if they're talking about going to a nice restaurant, you know that 100 rupees is not going to be enough for a restaurant, right? So what should your answer be? Sorry, can't come. Unless one of you is willing to pitch in for me. Sorry, I can't come. Why? Because my budget does not allow me to come this month. It's not forever. Well, Pastor, they're going to think I'm stingy. So what? So what? None of them are going to come and help you when you're in debt. None of them are going to do that. So it doesn't matter what other people do. See, again, this is one of the biggest issues, that we try to spend money trying to impress other people. Impress other people. We're trying to spend money to showcase a certain side of us that is not even true. And so it's very important to make sure that we have a budget and that we move in the right direction, so that so that you can get to a successful financial future. Number 2, decide to take ownership. Decide to take ownership. Decide. All right, I love seeing this comment. Agnes says, cleared my credit card bills. My savings have gone up after Money Matters. The budget factor is the key. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I love that. All right. Jabba says, thanks, Benana and Arpitaka, for educating. I was so used to spending with credit cards for reward points, not realizing that it was nothing but putting myself in debt. Absolutely. Absolutely. Priyanka says, started budgeting after listening to Money Matters sessions. Love that. Yeah, I didn't see these comments, but I love seeing those things. Took a U-turn about 5 months ago, and it made a significant impact. I love that. I love that. I love seeing that. Again, see, all of these things, these biblical principles have been outlined to us and for us in the Word of God. But if we don't use the wisdom, again, this morning I was teaching in the church, and I said, too many times we use prayer as the answer for everything. And so, but if we're not using the wisdom of God, you can be almost by your own actions digging a hole for yourself and then still keep praying and saying, God, please do something about my finances. That's not how it works. Amen? So we need to be paying attention to what we're doing on a daily basis. All right. Number 2, I said, decide to take ownership. Decide to take ownership. For example, if you leave your car or a bike, let's say you're going out, or some of you might actually, because of the lockdown, maybe you have given your car or bike or even your home for someone else to stay in right now or to look after while you are staying in your hometown with your family or something else. Or sometimes even when somebody is moving out of the country or traveling out of the country, they end up giving their car or bike to somebody else and say, hey, please take care of it. Once I'll be back, I'll get it back from you. And now let's say you're the person who is lending somebody that, but or even if you, in certain cases, some of you might have actually lent money to somebody else and say, hey, invest this money for me. I was recently talking to a person who actually gave a chunk of money to one of their friends and said, hey, I know you're running a business here. I'm investing this into the business, or invest this for me, and I'll, and let me know what kind of returns I can get. Now, let's say you go back to them after a couple of months or something, and once you ask them for the car or for the money or for the bike or whatever it is, if they act like they don't know where they last saw it, how many of you will be happy regarding that? None of you. Now, none of you will be happy regarding that because what you gave belongs to you. Are you understanding that? What you gave belongs to you. Now, even in so what you wanted the person to do is you wanted them to take responsibility. You wanted them to take ownership of what you have given to them and treat it like it was theirs. You got that? You wanted, so for example, if you gave your bike to them, you wanted to treat that bike like it was theirs and take good care of it, wash it, clean it, service it, do everything that needs to be done. If you gave them the money, you wanted them to be really careful about the money. Don't be reckless with the money. Invest it in the right place. Take care of it, multiply it, and then hand it over to me, and so that you can get a part of that share. Right? You wanted them to take ownership of what you are placing in their hands. Now, here's what I want us to understand. The Bible says every good and perfect thing comes from God into our lives, which means even the money and the finances, the job through which the finances come in, all of it is from God. Now, if it is from God, then we ought to make sure that we take ownership of that and say, okay, whatever I do, ultimately I know I'm responsible. Ultimately, I know I have to give an answer to God, and therefore I need to use this money wisely. Wisely. The book of Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 7 says this: the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Once again, when we talk about credit cards and when we talk about going into debt, let me say this. Going into debt or having debt is not sin. However, I will say this. Going into debt is something, it should be the last resort for you. Should absolutely be the last resort for you. All right? Because again, clearly, the borrower is servant to the lender. Now, I'm talking about deciding to take ownership. Because if you don't take ownership for your money, if you don't take ownership for your life, you will be spending money and you will be getting into debt like you don't have to be accountable. At the end of the day, you are the owner and you are responsible for your finances. No one else is. You, my friend, are responsible for your finances. Now, when it comes to debt, here's what I want to ask you. The first question, are you in debt? If yes, then to whom, how much, and what can be done about it? To whom, how much, and what can be done about it? See, some of you have not even calculated the amount of debt you have in your life. Some of you have credit card debt. Some of you have family debt. Some of you have debt with your friends. Some of you have debt with your employer. There are a bunch of different places that you are in debt. So the question is, to whom are you in debt to? Maybe it's a bunch of different people. Write the names down. How much? You've got to know exactly how much you're in debt. That's what a diligent person does. How much? Now, the question, the important one is, what can be done about it? What can be done about it? Not just prayer, but what can be practically be done about it? Now, a couple of questions and suggestions I'm going to give you. Number one, do I have to get rid of something? Do I have to get rid of something? Or do I have to sell something? Do I have to get rid of something? Do I need to sell my bike? Do I need to sell my car? Do I need to sell my computer? Do I need to sell my iPad that I barely use? Do I need to sell maybe some equipment that I have? Do I need to sell that extra keyboard or that guitar that I never play? I bought it 5 years ago thinking I'll learn how to play the guitar. I don't even know how many chords there are. If that's the case, maybe you need to sell the guitar and think about buying a guitar a couple of years from now after you're out of debt, and then you can still learn guitar. Because learning guitar is not going to do anything for your financial future at this point. And maybe you just wanted to start a hobby, but it did not materialize. And so maybe the best thing that you can do is sell it away and use that money to take care of somebody's debt or take care of the debt that you have with somebody, right? What can you get rid of? Number two, how can you reduce your expenses? How can you reduce your expenses? Again, this has a lot to do with your heart and with your emotions, because a lot of the expenses you may have right now are just to impress the people around you. A lot of the expenses that you may be having right now may be just to impress the people around you. How can you reduce your expenses? Can you reduce your shopping expense? Can you reduce your food, eating out expense? Can you reduce your travel expense? Again, when I talk about travel expense, I'm not just talking about, well, in a lockdown, you're not really traveling anywhere, but I'm not just talking about traveling to other cities or countries and stuff. Even your daily travel back and forth, is there a way for you to reduce that, cut down the expenses? What services should you be canceling? I'm talking about streaming services. Are there certain streaming services that you need to get rid of? You're not watching them, and even if you're using them, it's just a bunch of, a waste of time, really. You're not able to, it's not really benefiting you. It's just distracting you. Maybe you need to cancel some services that you are currently on. Maybe cancel some memberships. Maybe even a gym membership or whatever other clubs that you're a part of. Maybe canceling some of those things so that you can reduce your expenses. And then, how can you increase your income? How can you increase your income? Maybe get an extra job. Maybe sleep a little less. Maybe you can teach something to someone. Maybe you have a skill. Think about ways to increase your income. Ways to increase your income. Right? So you've got to take ownership and come up with the answers for these questions. Take ownership of the debt. You didn't fall into debt by accident. Take ownership. Nobody decided it for you. Take ownership. All right? And number three, decide your story. Number 1, decide to be diligent. Number 2, decide to take ownership. And number 3, decide your story. Now, again, the story that we have in our life, again, decide your story. All right. I see some question. Just put that aside for me and then bring it up at the end of the lesson and I'll answer that question. All right. Right. Number 3, decide your story. Again, culture always tells us that more is better. Right? Every advertisement will tell you more is better. Every ad before the YouTube commercial will tell you more is better. Every billboard will tell you that you've got something missing and you need something else added into your life. Every advertisement will tell you you don't have enough clothes, you don't have enough shoes, you didn't travel to enough places, you don't have the latest car, you don't have the latest gadget, you need this, you need this, you need this, you need this. And the culture keeps preaching to us and telling us the story that more is better. And many of us believe that. But again, we try to get more thinking that it will satisfy us, but it never does. It never really does. Think about the most expensive purchase that you've made in your life. The most expensive purchase. Now, you might have really, really, really enjoyed it. But for how long? How long? I mean, for some of you, it may be your cell phone. For some of you, maybe your bike, your car, or some other gadget. And I know when you got that brand new bike, when you got that brand new laptop, when you got that brand new keyboard or guitar or whatever, the really nice one, the nicest model that you could find, the big screen TV and the surround sound system and all of that, it was really nice. But how long did that excitement and satisfaction last? Be honest with yourself. Now, I'm not telling you that everything that you buy will always lead to disappointment. There are certain things that I have purchased, certain things that have been given to me as a gift, and I still enjoy them even after several years. But again, at the end of the day, there's always something shinier, better, faster, bigger, all of that. It's always around the corner. And so to get into debt to get those things is absolutely foolish. 1 Timothy chapter 6. Please go there with me. 1 Timothy chapter 6. And starting from verse 6. It says, "Now godliness with contentment is great gain." Godliness with contentment is great gain. He doesn't say buying more things is great gain. He doesn't say the car that you have, which is 5 years old, now replacing that with the latest is great gain. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying the iPhone that you have is three versions older, so now throwing that away and getting into debt to get the latest one is not great gain. He's saying godliness with contentment is great gain. Contentment says, I'm content. Contentment is saying, I am happy with where I am, but I'm always looking for a greater future. Is that making sense? I'm happy with where I am. I'm not going to complain about where I am, but I'm always looking for greater things. I'm always looking for the bigger things. I'm always looking. Why? Because God has a greater plan for our lives. So we're always looking forward, but not in a complaining state. We're satisfied where we are, always looking to the future. Always looking to expand. Verse 7 says, "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out." We brought nothing in, we carry nothing out. "And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content." He's bringing it down to the very basic, food and clothing. He's talking about survival. Verse 9, "But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition." Verse 10, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, and pierced themselves through many sorrows." He's saying when they fall into love, they even weird away from their faith. They weird away from God. Why? For the love of money. And he says, the end of that was not great gain, but the end of that was many sorrows. I'll read the last couple of verses in the New Living Translation. In verse 9, but people who long to be rich fall into temptations and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. Again, when we talk about Bible verses like this, a lot of us think about people like who made the biggest scams in the nation's history. We think of maybe people like Malia. We think about people like the guy who, with the biggest scams. What's the jeweler, Modi? I'm not talking about the prime minister. Huh? What Modi? Lalit Modi, the jeweler. There's a series on Netflix that I watched. I think they had three different episodes. One was about the guy who owned the Sahara company as well, the airline, and then I think he had a chit fund kind of thing. And so all of and when we think about greediness and money, and when we read scriptures like this, we think about people like that, and we try to justify ourselves and say, "Oh no, Pastor, but that's not me. I'm not that greedy." Now, please be careful. Their stories might have been publicized, right? Their stories might have been made into a documentary. Their stories might be on the front page of the newspaper. But listen to me very carefully. There are millions of other stories just like that. But the only difference is the numbers are different. The numbers are different, but the heart is the same. The numbers are different, but the heart is the same. Remember how we started this whole thing. I said, biblically speaking, money is not about the numbers, it is about the heart. The only difference between many people in the world today and the people that I just finished mentioning is that they're well known, and a lot of us are not well known. And the numbers are different, but the heart and the issues are still the same. And so we've got to be mindful, and we've got to be wise in making sure that we're taking biblical decisions and biblical wisdom to make sure that we have a successful financial future. God's will, the Bible is very clear that God's will is that all of us prosper, not that we perish, that all of us prosper. But in doing so, that we do it in a godly manner. But in doing so, that we do it based on the wisdom of God. So that while we become rich, while we grow in our wealth, we continue to be godly. We continue to live a godly life. We continue to be blessed to be a blessing to others as well. Amen. All right. It's already close to 8:20, so I'll close with this. I pray that this was helpful. Again, very quickly, if you want to take a look at the points again, 3 decisions that I was talking about. Decide to be diligent. Have a budget. Put things down. Decide to take ownership. Don't blame it on other people. Figure out how much debt you have. To whom do you owe? How much do you owe? What can be done about it? How can you increase your income? How can you decrease your expenses? And what are certain things that you can get rid of so that you can get rid of the debt that you've got? And number 3, decide your story. Don't let it be the story that the world tells you to live. The world tells you to live by the story that says, get more and be satisfied. Never works. Absolutely never works. God gives us a different opportunity. God gives us a different story to live out. He says, be content. Continue to be godly. Continue to walk in my wisdom. And through walking in my wisdom comes greater. Through walking in my wisdom comes more than you need. And in the more than you need, even as those riches come in, you will not be pierced with many sorrows in doing so. Amen.